Today, we're talking about universities, more in particular, Swedish and Italian universities. So, Italian and Swedish universities, they're pretty different. To start with the language. Of course, in Italy, Italian education is in Italian, which means that most of the courses, especially when it comes to bachelor, but I would say 99% of the master education, so the specialization, would be in Italian. So you have to know the language. In Sweden, it's very different. Sweden is more international, it's much a smaller country. The bachelor has to be given in Swedish. But there are bachelors that are made in English. So again, if you don't speak Swedish or Italian, maybe Sweden is more of a choice for you. The books. This is a book that I used in Sweden. It's a book of biochemistry and it is in English. This is a book that I used in Italy about physiology. It's in Italian. So literature, most of the time in Italy, is in Italian. And I would say, especially if you come to scientific matters and scientific programs, in Sweden is in English. So much easier if you're a student from another country. But let's say you have found already the program you want to attend. You say, I already know what I want to do, but I'm a bit unsure about the finances. How much is it going to cost me to live and study in Italy or in Sweden? Because for some reason, you're picking between those two countries, or maybe you're interested in one of them. Starting again with Italy. In Italy, there is a university tax. And this university tax depends on how much basically your family makes. What's the income of your family? It can go somewhere between a few €100 up to a few €1,000 if your family has a really high yearly income. Sweden is not like that. Sweden doesn't have university taxes. In fact, the education in Sweden is free. Meaning that if you come from any country within the European Union, you're not going to pay for university. You're still going to pay for materials when it comes to books, when it comes to pens or whatever you need, but everything else, it's free. So when it comes to that, Italy is more expensive. On the other hand, you would have other expenses. And those expenses are, of course, cost of living, food, and everything else around. And there, everything is flipped, of course. Sweden is the most expensive of the two. Italy is a country that, especially in Europe, for European standards, it really depends on the city you live in, but it is not that expensive. So if you live in Rome, if you live in Milan, or other big cities, the cost might go up by a lot. But if you go to smaller university cities, the expenses would be much less. So rent would be much less, and food is definitely cheaper in Italy than it is in Sweden. There's also a big difference that I noticed living and studying in Italy or living and studying in Sweden, which is that in Italy, the tendency is to rent an apartment together with other people. So you would have a room in a student apartment. This makes it, of course, cheaper. Yeah, a room costs much less than what a full apartment would cost, which is something that tends to happen in Sweden. There are corridor rooms where you can get a room in a corridor with a shared kitchen with a lot of students, but most of, especially Swedish students, tend to want to have a studio flat. And this is what normally Swedes do. And a lot of people come to Sweden tend to do. A rent in Italy can go somewhere from €100 a month to €200-300 a month for a room in an apartment. In Sweden, if you want to have a room in a corridor room, there is somewhere between, I would say, around €200 or 2,000 crowns a month, all the way, I would say, around €300-400 just for a room. But if you want to have your own studio, like most of the people do in Sweden, I would say that you have to push it much higher. You have to go around €500-600 a month or 5,000-6,000 crowns a month. In Italy, it can be much cheaper. It can be around €300-400 a month. And when it comes to cost of living, everything else costs more in Sweden. Then I went out to grab a quick sandwich and it started to rain. I think one of the next videos must be about Swedish weather. But now let's start talking about the next thing, which is studying at the university. That's why I'm going to a better place for that. This is the actual music in here. It's in the library. Now this is Stockholm University's library, which, I'm not supposed to talk in here, but I actually looked around, there's nobody in here right now studying, so I'm gonna do it. And when it comes about studying, it is very different between Italian and Swedish universities. Italy is very theory-based. You have to study a lot. You have to study a lot on the books, and it's not that much contact and practice. And you're gonna have different courses going on at the same time. So in one semester, you're gonna have probably 2, 3, 4, or 5 courses that you have to attend and you have to study. At the end of it, you're gonna have the exams. And all the exams are basically within 1 or 2 months. So this means that you're gonna get a more interdisciplinary education, but it is sometimes harder, of course, to catch up with everything. In Sweden is, at least in most of Swedish universities, very different. You will attend one course at a time. So you will have one course with all the different practicals and all the different assignments. But at the end of the course, and it's maybe 1 or 2 months, you would have the exam. And once you've done the exam and all the assignments in it, you're done with that course. This means that you can focus much more on one thing at a time, and it suited me better. Maybe other people prefer the Italian system when you study different things at the same time. So it's really up to you what you prefer. Wow, this music is loud.
Biblioteket är stängt. Välkommen åter.
I went to the other side of the campus to shoot this video, and now I'm stuck here. So apparently that's why there was music in the library. They were about to close. I'm gonna talk more about my experience studying in Sweden, how my student life has been, in another video, so subscribe if you want to watch more so that you don't miss that video. But moving on, once you've studied for a course, you have of course the exam. And exams are very different between Italy and Sweden. I don't know if there are changes being applied in Italy, but it tendentially goes this way. You will have a written exam with a specific amount of questions on the topic. You would answer that, you would get a grade on that thing. And after that, you will go to the oral exam. So you're basically sitting in front of the professor or the assistant of the professor that are gonna ask you a question. And depending on how you answer, you will get a grade. Really easy, written and oral exam. This of course doesn't make it anonymous, which can happen sometimes that the professor either doesn't like you or can do something different. Since it's not recorded because it's an oral exam, things can go wrong. In Sweden, to avoid those problems, every exam has to be recorded. So it's either written, like the most of the exam. You normally have a written exam and the grade that you get on that is the grade that you get on the course. But since there are a lot of different either practicals in between during the course, or you're gonna have assignments that you have to hand in and you might get a grade on that or not. It could be pass or fail. That basically, it's an extra safety for the teacher to tell you you've learned enough because you passed all those different moments and the final exam is gonna give you the grade. But in case the course needs an oral examination, let's say that you're studying language, you're gonna have an oral examination to prove that you've learned that language. You're gonna have your oral examination with a professor and this has to be recorded. So if you're not happy with the grade that you get in your exam session in Italy, well, you have to come to the next session to basically redo the exam. In Sweden, you always have the possibility, if you think that you've been mistreated, you can always ask somebody else to check the written exam or maybe to listen to the oral exam so that somebody else independently from the first person will give you the grade that they think it's best. So somehow there's more transparency in Sweden than there is in Italy. I do think though that the Italian system having an oral examination helps you to learn how to discuss your professional topic or simply how to improve in your professional social interactions. I finally have to talk about teachers, and especially when it comes to relationships between students and teachers. Now, in Italy it's a very hierarchical. There's the professor, which is the higher up, then the assistants, and then the students down here. In Sweden it's very different. Of course you would have this ranking within the universities, but it happened to me, and this shocked me. We're coming from Italy to Sweden, where other people would just call a professor on the phone and say, hey, we're down here, we're trying to make this exercise, but we cannot do it. Can you come and help? And the professor would say, sure, give me 2 minutes. And then would run down the stairs, sit with us, and does this exercise and explains it over and over and over again. It might be that Lasse, the professor, was a really good professor, but this kept happening over and over and over again. Every single professor is basically put the students first. The professor is there so that the student can learn as much as possible. So this is a big difference that I noticed as soon as I came to Sweden. So maybe as a student it is better to be in Sweden, but also I feel that the system that there is in Italy is much better to learn, because it really pushes you as a student to learn things, to memorize, to come to the exam where you basically know everything. You're not expecting the professor to feed you. This is probably, if you ask me, the major difference that I felt as a student. So this was my take on Italian and Swedish universities. It was a lot of facts, so it's not really my experience, even though sometimes I said what I gave some opinions about what my experience were in Italy and in Sweden. So let me know what you think about it, or maybe if your experience was different, or maybe if I forgot something very important about them. If you want to know more, I'm gonna have more videos coming on the topic, especially one which is my experience as an Italian living in Sweden and studying in Sweden, what I had difficulties with and what I thought was much better than Italy. So, but also if you have ideas, I don't know, you want to have a video specifically for university in Sweden, how is it, what I should think about before moving here, or the same thing about Italy, just let me know. I can easily make this video. So I'm making those videos for you who are watching. I know those things, so I don't have to share with myself, even though I have fun making the videos. So let me know if there is something that you want to know in the future, that you want to know about Italy and Sweden. With that, I have a lot to do, so I'm gonna keep working, and let's wrap up this video.